Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the fantastic edition of Sitback with Shaq and Anu. It is a Wednesday evening. It's midweek, of course, and it's time for us to kickstart the show on a Wednesday at 10 o'clock, coming to you live on our PodHub platforms and, of course, live on Channel 1 Dialog TV. Hi, Anu. How are you?
Hi, Shaq. Hopefully, we won't have yesterday's shenanigans on repeat today. But I've got to say, today was an interesting day. Taking the bus to work in the morning to our other avatars. In the work, they were packed simply because there was a how shall I say, a strike that was on and not yet on. So there were less than half the amount of trains usually in operation. So it was how shall I say, a packed day to begin with. But of course,
But did you
nothing takes the
did you also see the footage all over social media on the number of people who are embracing the trains?
embracing not just the trains, the buses too. So lots of buses have now people up on the roof, and
Yeah.
as does the train. They are all around the engines as well. Whenever if you've got a foothold or some kind of handhold, you are there because we used to kind of mock India for what this is, and guess what?
Yes.
Karma, karma can be a real how shall
I
I say,
actually I actually
backbiter.
I know I actually saw something on social media today where they were comparing us and Bangladesh in different
Yeah,
years, and obviously 2022 they were obviously showing pictures of of people getting on the train and on the train and in the train and under the train and whatnot, and then of course there was
correct.
a picture of 2022 in Bangladesh with electric trains, right,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
metros
Yeah,
and tubes and all that stuff. So,
I didn't even realize that Bangladesh had gone into electric trains, and that's a sure sign of development the moment you can have a network like that. But I thought, actually what really impressed me was, a guest we had on the show a few days ago, Hirunika Premachandra, who's actually, walking the talk, or actually, in this
yep.
case, sitting, sitting on the job, as was
Yep, yep.
promised. There are some prophetic statements that have been made on our show which have come true. I mean, one was Harin Fernando, Minister Harin Fernando, and yeah, now Hironika. So you never know which this might actually, our show might get banned because it might just, the government and the powers that be, මෙතන කතා කරන දේවල් ඇත්තටම වෙනවා. ඒ හින්දා so
but one of the things that actually went wrong, Anu, was Minister Kanchana and his promise with the ship, right? So
that's
that
correct.
didn't come
Yeah.
true, and that was an exclusive on our show, right? So we need to get
Yeah,
him for
that's
that.
true. Actually, he revealed that he had opened the LCs, two LCs, that very evening when he came on our show. But the ships never materialized. But then I did a little bit of digging into, what had gone wrong. So the protocols have changed. It was a simple matter of, government to business kind of transactions that were taking place. And when it's a government, obviously, you're bound to pay. And when your, banks are on par, certainly. But right now, we are government in default, and our banks have been, blacklisted. So, yeah, opening an LC through one of our banks, even when we have the money in hand, is problematic.
Yep. Anyway, so just that's just a little roundup of as to exactly how our day was. Is honky dory. But as always on the show, we're basically bringing in lots of top end guests, so to say, and individuals, of course, who are sitting in the boards of companies and board of directors. Of course, talking about trending topics and bringing in authorities to help us with those trending topics, and maybe also put rest to certain things and questions that the circles are asking. That's what we do. And without any further ado, I think we need to, of course, introduce our wonderful guest for today, who's been very obliging to come on the show. It's Pradeep De Almeida, who, of course, is the Group Chief Technological Officer of Dialog Axiata PLC. Hi, Pradeep. Good evening to you.
Hi, Pradeep.
Hi, good evening, Shaq, and good evening, Anu.
So wonderful to have you on the show, and there are lots of questions that we are basically going to be posing to you. Most of these questions, Pradeep, it doesn't really come from us. It's questions that, of course, from consumers of dialogue, for individuals out there who are using all different types of dialogue instruments, so to say. But before we actually dive into the conversation itself, we have a daily poll for the show. So we're going to start with the poll, and we're going to get into the conversation. Here is the poll for today.
So as you know, we retrofit the poll to suit the guest on each night, and today is no different. So without further ado, here it is. Right. Are telecommunication companies meeting your requirements or aspirations in this case? Yes or no answers only. WhatsApp your answer to our hotline 077 669 1590. Once again, are telecommunication companies meeting your requirements or aspirations? Yes or no. WhatsApp your answer to our hotline. And at the end of the show, we will reveal the answer as it stands. Of course, I must say, Pradeep, that this question is something that everybody's talking about. Not particularly this question, but all of the how shall I say, all of the issues that people seem to have with telecommunication companies. Given the situation we are in right now, where lots of people are working from home, and where lots of children are being online or trying to be online when it comes to schoolwork.
Yeah, so as you know, the telecom equipments or the towers also operate on electricity. So there are a few challenges going by the current. First, I think if I track back, first it was the COVID, where suddenly all of us had to go for working from home and online mode. And there was sort of a very surge, I mean, 30 to 40% traffic increase, that happened sort of overnight. But then what we did was we managed to, let's say, accelerate all the upgrades. So to give an example, on a typical year, we may be doing around 3,000 upgrades for the whole year. But 2021 or 2020 because of the COVID, we accelerated it and almost did three times, like around 10,000 upgrades, just to bring the network traffic load that we got due to online working and online schooling under control. So, which really helped us to bring the situation under control, because we saw three waves of COVID coming on different time of the year between 20 and 21, and every time it was 30 to 40% increase, which was not never planned. The telecom networks won't grow like that under a business as usual situation. You will never see that type of the traffic increase. But then with a lot of effort from staff, committed effort from starting from the board of directors in terms of investment, the management, the staff, as well as all the supporting agencies, we managed to get the networks up and running. So which really helped us to bring the situation under control and give a decent access to the to consumers, so that they can use it for their day-to-day operation. Then comes the new challenge, which is related to power and then backup, as well as the stability of the network. So there again, we have. I'll give you a typical arrangement of a tower, which is like we have a standby batteries, and then generators. Generators are not there for each and every tower. So for us, around 30% of the towers are powered by backup generators, and then we have a portable operation as well. So which really help us to keep the network up and running. So then sourcing, as you know, these days, sourcing of fuel is one of the biggest challenges, and it's hardly any available in the local market. But then we work with other institutions like bunkering operators to get the fuel to keep the network up and running. So if you really look at, I think, irrespective of what are the challenges we have been facing, as operators, we have managed to maintain our services and to give uninterrupted connectivity to the our consumers.
Right. So actually, there's something else that I wanted to actually ask you about right now. When it comes to now, you, as the CTO in Dialog, when it comes to the hierarchy of operations, are you the most important man right now in Dialog? Because I'm sure everybody must be looking to you for the answers. When, as they say, the shizzle hits the fan, look to Pradeep to find the solution. And what kind of pressure is on you right now?
Yeah, you can't say so, because when it comes to dialogue, it's teamwork, because dialogue has worked as a team for the last so many years. And that's the reason for dialogue success also. We have this concept called happy dialogue, we never say mama dialogue, happy dialogue. So it's a combined team effort. You're starting from the lowest possible up to CEO and the board of directors. So then accountability, yes, when it comes to the accountability and the responsibility, yes, it stops at the top. Yeah, that you can't say no. But when it comes to the, let's say, the execution, getting things done, contributing to get it done and all that, everybody equally, everybody has their own role, so they have to play their role to get it done. So you can't say it's me, or CEO only is doing this job. No, we have close to 3,000 workforce who play different roles. And but then if there's anything related to the network, if customers are not happy, or they're facing issues, there are complaints and all that, yes, the bug should come and stop at me, because as a CTO, I'm responsible for that role.
Pradeep, let's take a look at the obstacles that the telco industry per se. If now we're not necessarily looking at dialogue itself, the telco industry per se, like you mentioned earlier on, especially there was a massive surge of data requirement during the pandemic. So honestly speaking, the telcos pretty much ran the economy during the pandemic because they were all so dependent on their mobile devices, and not necessarily for connectivity, but also to get stuff sent home or dropped off home. Lots of people started online businesses, all thanks to the telcos, and of course they did a massive job at that point. Now this challenge is completely different to what the telcos obviously got together at that point. They thought they sort of conquered that situation, but bam, something like this comes into the way where you do also have power cuts at the same time. And at the same time, there is a massive surge of data with individuals required to work from home. How do you guys handle this? Because I know it cannot be easy. I know your customer service hotline must be just blowing up all the time. But how do you handle this?
Yeah, so it really is a challenge. Like I said, a scenario like this is not planned under your business as usual planning, on the business planning cycle. And then when you face a situation like this, what we do is we have to assess what is the real requirement, and how many upgrades, what is the extension or the enhancement of the capacity that we have to do. So then we go to the board with justifying the reasons why we should do it, looking at the customer experience, because we treat customers as our greatest asset, and then we have to ensure the customer experience is maintained. So then we get the required budgeting, then we work with our team as well as the vendors who supports us, and then come up with proper project plan with very stretched targets to get this delivered. So that's how actually we managed to handle this surge which happened during 2020 and 2021. So there's a lot of work, though most of the people won't see it. There's a lot of work that went in, hard work, working, sometimes working 24 hours, working day and night to get it under control, and then to maintain the service level that we have to give the customer, so that they won't be impacted on their day-to-day activities.
Also, I just want to ask now, when it comes to maintaining your sites, and there are many, because Dialog has the largest network, obviously, and therefore has
Yeah.
the most number of towers in Sri Lanka. So obviously,
Yes.
putting up new towers, maintaining existing towers, replacing batteries, all of this requires imports. And imports are like a taboo word right now in Sri Lanka because of our foreign exchange shortage.
Yeah.
So how do you plan for that? Because you have an X number of batteries that you need to change every year. How do you do
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, so time to time there were certain regulations that were, coming into play because of the dollar impact as well as, dollar outflows and all that. But then the telcos together with the relevant ministries always work together, then ensure that these are not getting impacted. So it's, I don't want to say it's very, it's by default given. No, there are restrictions that comes in, then we work together, work as all the telcos work together, and then put the case to the relevant authorities and get it cleared. So that's how we managed to sort out the equipment importation and getting the equipment. So it's not only batteries, actually we need base station equipment, the transmission equipment, the power supplies, and core network equipments. There are various, so many different types of equipments which we have to import if you have to enhance or upgrade the network.
I think there was actually a
So
question that popped up on our screen right now. I think we're going to get into that question, Anu. It says, "Dear Pradeep, as we're all aware that we're still experiencing 3 to 4 hour power cuts daily, and still facing interruptions during the power failure. No data, 4G, no voice calls during this time. Please let us know the steps Dialog has taken to provide uninterrupted service to customers. This is more than 7 months now, and unfortunately, it says no proper solution has been given to the customers."
Yeah, so like I explained at the beginning, the towers are equipped with batteries, and then standby generators, which is there for around 30% of the network, and then the main source of power supply was commercial power. So if you look at a few years back, when the power, the grid is very very stable, then you don't have to have a longer duration power backups, as well as you don't have to equip generators for all the sites. And what we had was what we call standby batteries. Standby in the sense those are called VRLA, and those are meant to be operated not on daily basis, right? So maybe a power cut will happen once a month or once a week, and then the battery get charged, discharged, and the battery can sustain maybe 5 years, 6 years. What happened with the daily power cuts? This charge discharge cycles have started happening on daily basis. So then this the lifetime of a VRLA battery depends on the number of cycles as well as the temperature. When the power goes off, yeah, the air conditioner, if it's indoor side, stops working, as well as then the number of cycles comes 1 or 2 cycle a day. So which has an impact on the VRLA batteries. So we saw this degradation happening so fast. Then what we did was we started deploying lithium ion. Lithium ion compared to VRLA has a higher number of cycles. It's almost 10 times compared to the VRLA, and also it has a price impact as well, because that's expensive compared to a standard VRLA standby batteries. So we have started deploying. We quickly started deploying these batteries, and so far we have completed almost around 60% of the network with lithium ion, which gives a better backup, also a reliable backup time. And then second issue is, let's say, running the generators, because you have to ensure there's sufficient fuel. So just to give an idea, so even for today, like 3 hour power cut, if I have to run this network with the 30% of the generators that I'm having, we need around 100,000 of liters of diesel a week. So that amount
Wow.
of vehicle, so when you're struggling to get 10 liters or 20 liters for your vehicle, you can imagine the battle that you have to go to get 100,000 liters a week to power up the generator. So it's impossible. It's not possible to get it through the local market. That's why we work with the bunkering agents, where we get the fuel. The challenge there is you have to pay in dollars, not in rupees. So you have per liter, and also you have to pay a premium. But still, given that the connectivity is important, we have like not gone back, not investing on that. We have taken the decision, and then today we saw a lot of bunkering fuel, and which we used to now operate our generators. So just to ensure that we give the uninterrupted service, so we have taken these actions. And the third one, then so now with a lot of questions around grid, so you have to find alternatives for the grid. So what we have done is, again, we have gone to the board justifying the case, and then we have got investment for solarization. So we have already like almost 162 sites on solar, and we have now in the process of implementing close to 1,300 sites to be on solar. So we'll have alternative energy where we will use solar power to power the base station sites. So that project, the full lithium ion completion may happen by end of this year. So where all the batteries will have stable lithium ion instead of the VRLA. And then the solarization, at least close to 1,300 sites will be solarized uh, most probably by first quarter of 2023, because these are involve importation of equipment and require a lot of manpower where you have to go to the site, do the panel installation, the controllers connected to the system and all that. So there's a timing issue also, and then you need a lot of workforce or manpower to complete these activities. So we have already planned these, and those are in progress. So maybe the frustration I understand, because you will see it's not easy to do overnight. These are not these are not things that you can do within 1 or 2 days or 1 week or 1 month, and also it involves a lot of investment. But fortunately we have a board who understands the requirement, who is with dialogue at this moment, understanding the situation that we are in. So we don't have issues getting those investment. So now it's a matter of, and also the whole world is going through a logistic nightmare. Supply chains have become a real nightmare. So even getting a solar panel nowadays, if I used to get it within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, now they last for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, or even 16 weeks. So those are the things which are beyond our control, because we have to go by the UN. And also this is after working with multiple partners, not a single partner. We work with multiple partners. Look at all these, who has the fastest supply chain and who has the best product, and who has the best pricing, okay, who can do it faster. So we work with multiple parties, and hopefully by next 2023 quarter one, we will have, let's say at least one third of the network with equipped with solar power, and another one third equipped with standby generators, and as well as almost 100% of the network equipped with reliable lithium-ion batteries.
Pradeep, just to
Interesting.
just to ask this question, how possible is it now, given this current context? I know that each of the telecommunications operators have their own networks, and there's a little bit of sharing going on. Surely, if you were to share the towers, if the telecom operators were to share the towers, this problem is not so difficult, is it?
Uh, Today, I think I'll explain on the sharing. Actually, the operators are sharing the towers. At least even we share almost 40% of our towers from other operators, and vice versa, same for the others also. Like, so at least 30 to 40% of the towers are shared. And then the other second question is, yes, can you share the power systems? Yes, you can share, but then when you have to have your, let's say, 4 kilowatt or 5 kilowatt of, type of power, then if it's two, then you have to have 10 kilowatts of power. So then the equal battery banks, it need to be double. So the, let's say, the advantage you get on sharing on for towers, yeah, for sure, because it involves a lot of cost. Civil infrastructure is expensive, and then sharing towers, yes, and sharing power also will make sense. But then whether, first question is whether the grid, a single line or single supply line can need power 3 or 4. No, there are limitations, because given the amperage or whatever the grid connection that you're getting will have limitations. Plus, then the other, when it comes to the rectifiers and the battery banks, most probably they need to scale up linearly based on the load. So, and so because of that, so you won't see that many examples. Let's say, like I said, 40% on tower sharing, you will not see that percentage when it comes to the power, due to the reasons that I just mentioned. Because whether you do it on your own or whether you share, it has to scale up linearly. So because of that, you won't see a big advantage. And also the appetite to invest, for, like I said, lithium ion versus VRLA, how fast, how ready are you to look at that type of investment? There are a lot of dependencies. So because of that, because of these dependencies, you don't see that much of sharing on the power side. But tower side, I think every operator, the priority today is to use someone else's tower rather than building your own.
Pradeep, now with the current situation that we're facing, has this actually stunted Dialogue's rollout for the for 5G, which I suppose, the year 2020, 2021 was supposed to be really big in terms of the 5G rollout and pretty much cover almost all over the country. Has it stunted in any way, or is it on the back burner for the time being? What's the progress there with 5G?
Yeah, so 5G in Sri Lanka, the 5G license are not issued yet. Actually, there was
Okay.
plan to let's say issue it this year, but so far the regulations or the license is not issued. So because of that, none of the operators can go on commercial launch yet. But having said that, it's a technology that we have been promoting or showcasing from 2018-19, and we have around let's say we have around 80 sites where we have opened up to the customer. So if you are getting a 5G device, if you're buying any 5G device, you can just insert your 4G SIM and then experience a 5G network where you can experience speeds up to around 800, 900, or even 1 Gbps type of speeds. So it's available on certain spots. You'll get spots coverage in and around Colombo and even Candigore, uh, because of these sites that we have on trial basis. But for a commercial rollout, we have to wait till the regulator come up with the licenses, and once they allocate the official licenses, we will be able to go ahead and launch the commercial 5G services.
So the other question is, Pradeep, that when it comes to handling these customer complaints, do you do you get overwhelmed? Because like you said, the buck stops with the board of directors, and the C level people, and I'm sure lots of people might be looking at you to find solutions from especially corporate customers, and customer hot it comes to individual customers. What kind of pressure is that? And do you have, do you sometimes just say, what, I can't deal with this right now, so stop bothering me? Because it must be relentless, right?
Yeah. So I never say no to a customer. Actually, most of the time I'm also working as a customer service agent, because all the known contacts, or anyone, or sometimes through, some people get my number and then directly call me and say, but then it's only very, very small or limited amount of complaints, because we have a empowered organization and we have a committed team, and it's there is a customer complaint handling unit and engineering also, where and also a customer complaint handling unit under the customer services unit division. So there's a lot of let's say effort that we are making to handle each and every customer complaint. But having said that, that I can give a guarantee that I can solve 100% of the complaints, it's not possible, because there are limitations in terms of the number of sites that we can roll out, and also the coverage availability, and some of the, let's say, the whatever the obstacles that we will face in terms of working with institutions or even the public protests, or not finding a suitable location or a building, or not getting the proper approval from the authority. So there are a lot of restrictions that limits us putting the site at the right place also. That's why there are sometimes frustration saying, yeah, I'm at this place, we have been facing this complaint. Yeah, but if you really look at, when we look at, yes, we have a site plan, we have worked hard to get it done, but unfortunately, due to certain restriction, either through the authorities, the government, or public protests and all that, we have been unable to put a site on that location. So to overcome this, actually, we came up with this concept called smart poles. You will see, even for example, Marine Drive was one area. One side is the sea, the other side, it's buildings, and then we were finding it difficult to get suitable sites to give coverage, and then there were sure drops while we were driving along the Marine Drive. But what we did was, then we came up with this the what I call lamp pole type of structures. You will see if you're traveling around Marine Drive. That's where we started the project. So there's around 8 or 10 poles where we have mounted base stations, hardly visible because you will see it as a lamp pole, which gives a seamless connectivity. And that we have expanded today, and across Sri Lanka we have around 600 lamp pole sites. These are all miniature sites where we have installed, just to give coverage to these blind spots, or where we are having challenges getting a proper tower or a proper site So which really has helped us to overcome or sort out most of the customer complaints.
There's another question that
We
we
have
actually have, which is coming in right now. Yeah, no, this is a question that came in from Jagat. This is going back to Pradeep, what you spoke about earlier on, and the question that Anu asked you in terms of sharing tower and sharing power. Would sharing towers and power bring the cost down, and as a result, the cost down and the price to the customer? Jagat wants to know.
Yeah, certainly sharing will have synergies which will help to bring the cost down. And if you remember, even when I joined Dialog, we were paying 4 rupees for incoming call and 9 rupees for outgoing call. That was the
Yep.
time, right? I
yes.
think some of you may remember, even incoming call was charged at 4 rupees and outgoing call was charged at 9 rupees, right? That was the tariff
I think we
structure
were
that we
paying
were
we
having
we
at
were
that
paying
time.
like 100, 200, 300 rupees for an IDD call also at that time.
Yeah,
That's
correct.
right. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. A call to Europe was 400 rupees per minute,
There
right?
you go.
And that was
There
a
you go. Yeah.
and a kilobyte of data was 2 cents. So you multiply by 1,000 and you know the price of a megabyte, and you again multiply by 1,000, then you know the price of a gigabyte, right? So that was the cost structures we had. But look at today, how much are we paying? Less than a rupee for a voice call, 20 cents, or even less for SMS. Nothing for the incoming calls. Even IDD, you get it at 5 rupees, 10 rupees. So that's why. So this we have given all that benefit, the tariff here, given the best rates tariffs to the customers. And also if you look at the price increase, I think we haven't done any price increase for the last, I must say, close to 20 years, right? So whatever the ups and downs you see in terms of pricing is due to the changing of the tax structures, even the recent tax changes, the telecom levy and the other tax changes. So the price variations are due to that one, and that again, it's a direct pass through to the government, right? So we just collect from customers and then pass it to the government. So as an operator, actually, we have always given that benefit to the customer, and I'm sure the customers have benefited a lot. Even if you look at the GB pricing in here, is one of the lowest in the world. I think if I remember correct, we were the seventh or eighth lowest in the world in terms of data pricing. So there's a lot of advantages or the benefits in terms of pricing that we have given to the customer. And we have, even with high inflation today, your like everything has gone up for us, whether it's steel or labor, diesel, or all have gone by 60-70%, but still we have been holding and giving the best tariff to the customers.
Pradeep, despite all of this, Dialog is the largest network out there and obviously has the most number of customers. Being that, it also opens itself out to the most number of attacks. Because when you have more customers, obviously more complaints also come your way. So, what kind of churn, what kind of migration are you seeing? Like people get so upset that they want to leave. Do you see that, or is it still stable?
Not much actually. Oh, if you look at year on year, we have been managing to grow our market share, being the largest. The number one. We have been able to grow our market share. So which shows the customers have trust or faith, or they believe in dialogue, which is again a strength for us. And that's why we also take every complaint very seriously, put in lot of effort. But then I can't give you the assurance that I will solve 100% of the complaints. But then at least we will do our best to give the best possible solution, provided the investment are in place. We would love to give 100% of the coverage in this country and put towers everywhere, and do our best to give a seamless coverage all over the country. But having said that, investment is not the main issue. Actually, there are a lot of other issues, challenges coming from the regulatory approvals, authorities, public protest, and all that, which sometimes hinders our progress when it comes. There were years actually, because when it comes to the site acquisition, if you have to acquire site, it takes a long time, and there's a long cycle, and then we have to get approvals from around 7 different authorities. Based on the type of the tower structure. And there were instances. Actually, last year I think we did a great job. We managed to acquire most of the plan sites, but there were years where we couldn't even utilize the full investment that we got due to the delays on site acquisitions and all that. Which again were there were a lot of external dependencies. So we always do our best, and so yes, there are complaints, but then in terms of market share, Dialog has been growing its market share, which shows that customers have trust and faith in Dialog.
Pradeep, you've been with Dialog for the longest time, of course, and you clearly grown up and ranks up to the CTO, right? Is there something that you have always dreamt of doing with Dialog that you want to accomplish, that you want to leave something behind, that you still are finding it difficult to actually go through, whatever the reasons it may be? What would you like to basically achieve at Dialog right now, technology wise or whatever, that you are still finding difficult to sort of go through?
You mean Pradeep's legacy?
Yeah, well, I suppose something that the country, something that you think the country is going to be really, this is going to be so much, so advantageous for the country, but you just still haven't actually put your finger on that as yet.
Yeah, actually, when it comes to this industry, we are happy what we have done and where the country is actually. If you compare rest of the world, when it comes to the telecommunication, this is one area we have done at least come closer to the developed country, giving the latest technology, latest access, and given the at least give the experience to the customers. But then what would have been, how would have we done better? Yes, there are struggles that we, especially when it comes to the utilities, getting electricity, and like even for new sites, as well as stable grid connectivity type of thing. It's really challenging. And in terms of other areas, let's say what you're doing, giving let's say the features, or the services, access to new technologies, I think we can be happy of what we have done. I think so perhaps some of you may know, Dialog has been the world award winner 6 times. We're competing with all tier one or the top operators in the world, winning award at the Oscars, Oscars of the mobile, which is the Mobile World Congress. 6 times we have won for our innovation. I think so. There will be hardly only few operators. I'm not sure there is anyone who has won it 6 times. Like being a small operator coming from a country like Sri Lanka, we are so proud of what we have done to this country, giving this, bringing this technology, giving these services, and all that. So what would have done better? I feel it's on the other side, giving the infrastructure side. If we had better facilities in terms of better utilities, faster approval process and all that, I'm sure we could have done much better compared to what we have today.
Faster approval process within the company, or?
No, within the country. Like I said there are so many regulatories, that we have to go through. Around,
Right.
I told like a typical site acquisition maybe go from around 2 years. Sometimes some sites take 3 years. Imagine like getting approval to put a
Wow.
site. If it takes 2 years, you can imagine. Yeah. So it has to pass through two. So you have to acquire a site 2 cycles ahead of your budget planning. Yeah, for the construction. So that is a challenge. Those are the challenges that we are going through. So if we can have a faster process, I think I'm sure we can do a better, faster job and give more, more benefit to the consumers as well.
Pradeep,
Anu,
Shaq
hang
is
on
a
a minute.
retired,
Sorry,
Shaq
go
is a
on.
retired
What?
cricketer, Pradeep, just because he likes to bowl googlies once in a while.
Actually, Anu, hang on a minute. I want to. This is something that actually did pop up. I think Pradeep, you are in a very good position to actually answer this question. Some time ago, at the protest site, right? Dialogue
Yeah,
basically put up a tower, right? And the tower was. I mean, anybody who went there, there was a huge congestion as far as the network was concerned. The Dialogue put up a tower, and there
yeah,
was a huge hue and cry about this tower
yeah,
coming up, and lots of people had different stories about it.
yeah,
Someone's basically tapping what you're doing, etc. immediately 2 days or 24 hours or 48 hours later, Dialog brought it down. What was the
Yeah.
problem and what happened there?
Yeah. So actually, that tower was not on air. We never put it on air. So we actually, so the reason was, yes, we saw congestion, and the user experience was really bad. Right, the data throughput came down to around few kilobits per second type of throughput. So we understood the requirement to enhance the capacity. So what we did was to enhance, let's say, fast track the process. There were certain activities which are going in parallel because it was a temporary structure. So the structure was put in parallel to the approval seeking process. We were seeking the approval. So, but unfortunately, there was a lot of ha-ho's about it. So even before we putting up or putting it on air, so we had to take a decision whether to proceed with it or not, and also we were waiting for the approval. So given the situation, given there were a lot of then there were a lot of controversial statements made by also by responsible people, so which really were disturbing. Right? So then we had to make a decision where we decided, yes, given that situation, we will dismantle the structure. So to be clear on it, that site was never on air, and it was the temporary structure which was which was built parallel to the approval process, where we were working with the authorities to get relevant approval to put that site on air. But due to all these issues, it didn't get materialized, so we had to take a call and then remove the temporary infrastructure that we put on that particular location.
Pradeep, after talking to you, and I mean, I also just realized what a lot of work goes on in the back end, to make all of this
Oh, so true.
connectivity possible. Yeah,
So
and
true.
I think the bulk of the people don't realize this, and I work in advertising, and I do work with your brand very closely, and it's a brand I admire, I have to say, and I don't think we have ever communicated the gamut of what goes on. I mean, some of the things you are describing, I'm finding out just now after talking to you, right? I think if people knew exactly what a lot of work it requires and what kind of commitment it requires and what kind of maneuvering and logistical planning that it requires, they'll be a little more forgiving, because I know that any, not just Dialog, that any telecom operator just faces a lot of flack on a daily basis in the thousands, simply because people just can't, either the data, connectivity drops, or the data is too slow, so people just want it like instantly, not realizing that this is something that we've gotten used to in the last 20 odd years, right? Before that, we had the we had to dial up everybody and we were waiting for everything. So I think if this was communicated a little better, people would be a lot more appreciative of actually, what Dialog has done for this country.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're right actually, because all the hard work that goes through or goes behind may not be noticeable to the external or even to our consumers. And also, I think to get an idea of the relative performance also compared to other countries and all that, perhaps may not have the full visibility. But then if you really look at, there are independent parties who come up with different reports like Open Signals or Ooklas, which compare across the world, even the speeds, network performance, the quality of service, so it's always good to have a view on it, so that you will get a better understanding of the relative performance, how the network, because you can't blame customers, because the expectations are always high. You want the best, you want the higher speed and all that. So that's true, but then the limitations, when it comes to the spectrum or the size, or the capacities or other interferences. Sri Lanka also face interference from India time to time. So those issues are there. So when this happens, yes, there are degradations or the impacts to the network, but then is there a solution that you can do immediately? No, those are not easy. Even we have been struggling a lot to solve that interference issue, which comes and impact your home broadband services. But those are seasonal, right? It doesn't happen every day. It happens time to time. It's seasonal, and so a lot of challenges. Yes, you're right. If the customers have a better understanding, I think they will empathize more. But having said that, we also understand customers. We know the expectations are high. Even if the utility fails, if there's no diesel, they'll still expect yes, Dialog will provide us a connectivity, and so that's the faith that they have in. So it's our duty also to ensure that we meet that expectations as much as possible without saying no to anything. So we also can easily highlight and say sorry, what can I do, there's no diesel in the market, you also know. But then we went out of the way, right? We went after the bunkering guys, and then paying dollars, getting diesel just to ensure the generators are up and running, right? So but then no one will see it, right? The amount of effort, the decision making, the investments that's going behind. So, and also we don't want to brag about it, we just want to ensure that we give the service. That's our the focus is there, right? And what we do to go there, the pain, or the hard work that you're putting in, I don't think we want to go and tell, say this is what I do and all that. We never will come and do that.
Right.
But then I appreciate you telling it, because it's a lot of hard work, and the full credit should go to the staff, because there's a Dialog team who work as one team, around the clock, 365 days to get all these going.
I see. I suppose
That's
that's what
something else.
happens when you actually also pitch your brand as as high as Dialogue has actually pitched it so far. So that's basically what the customers expect from you. They don't expect a no at any given time because the brand is actually pitched that high. Also, Pradeep, I want to basically ask you, do we have the spectrum or do we have the infrastructure to have faster internet speeds than we actually have right now? Can we see that in Sri Lanka in the next couple of years or so?
Yeah, actually, 5G will be an answer, because 5G will give you almost 10 times speed compared to 4G, because it's a bigger spectrum. To give an example, so channel bandwidth of LTE, what you call one carrier, is around 20 megahertz, whereas it's 5G, it get expanded up to 100 megahertz. And then in terms of throughputs, let's say if the 4G side give you 1 Gbps of throughput, the total side, then 5G can give you 10 Gbps type of throughput. So for sure, you will see better, fast experience. And also, like I said, if you have a 5G phone, just insert your same SIM, and you can experience it. In heart of the Colombo and some of the main cities like Chandigarh, you will be surprised. We have demoed it, and even recently I was at a Samsung launch where they were, let's say, doing the new device launch, and there we were getting 3 Gbps type of speeds on the device. So imagine it's like fiber type of speeds getting on this due to 5G technology. So the answer is yes. Then we have to wait till we get the 5G, where you will see a big shift. But even with 4G, what we do is we keep on adding spectrum. We do a lot of refarming of the whole spectrum, which are used for, especially for 3G and 2G type of older technologies. We use it and then refarm it for 4G. So meaning you keep on adding more and more bandwidth, so which will give better experience to the customers.
Those phrases, Anu, those phrases that refarming in technology. What the hell? These phrases that we
It's
learn
like
every day.
using the same spectrum for a higher technology. Yeah, it's when you use the same spectrum that you have for older technology, you use it for higher technology, because there the efficiency is much better with the same
Absolutely.
same
Yeah.
same spectrum bandwidth. It will give a higher speed.
So
Pradeep,
we're
I'm
going through a
used to the
crash course in
terminology.
technology here.
Uh, No, I'm used to the terminology simply because I sit in on multiple meetings with the marketing team. They use the same terminology. So I had to get on board. Anyway, I've also got this
You
question
can teach
coming.
Shaq some of these words now. Yeah? You can
Yeah, yeah,
teach
he
Shaq
will.
some of
Don't
these
worry, he
words.
will.
When
Anu, we have a
comparing
question.
speeds, yeah, that's right. When comparing speeds and downtime with other countries, on average, where do you think Sri Lanka is in relation to broadband and fiber?
Yeah, so that's what I said. If you look at these open signal and no class, yeah, we were doing not top, not top on the list, but we were like in the middle of, maybe a little lower than the middle in terms of speed. But in terms of outage, we were like sort of very close to the best in class. We were maintaining 99.95 type of availability even on the radio network, which is sort of a world standard before all these power cuts started. But even with all these power cuts, we are still maintaining the network at availability at 98%. Meaning, if a total time is taken as 100%, only 2% you will not have the service, and 98% you will have the service type of availability, which is really good with all these power cuts and all that. We feel we are still doing our best to push it higher and even come close to what we used to maintain on a business as usual basis at 99.95. But it requires a lot of effort and requires a lot of especially sourcing fuel and then all the enhancing the battery banks, and which will incur a lot of investments also. So and but to mitigate that, only we are going ahead with solarization, which will help us to get green energy, which gives you a better sort of a return in terms of longer term, in terms of cost of a unit. When it comes to the renewable, will be cheaper because the lifetime is much longer. Solar you can go for around 20 25 years, and there's any opex involved, right? There's no fuel, nothing, right? So it's almost zero opex, but then higher investment in terms of capital expenditure, so which again will help us to enhance the availability of the network further. So once we do this lithium ion and the solar, I'm sure we will be able to bring it back. Even if with power cuts, we will be able to bring it closer to the levels that we used to maintain on the radio network.
Pradeep, Dialog is not the first operator in Sri Lanka. There were two others before Dialog came into the scene, and what you promised from the get go was the future today, right? And
Yeah.
now you are undoubtedly number one. When it comes to network coverage, customers, whatever. What changed the game? I know you've been with Dialog, I think, from the outset, and you've been
Yeah.
CTO for quite some time now. In fact, my wife was there, and she knows you very well, and you know her very well. And she was telling me, you've been there for the longest time. And what changed the game? How did Dialog become the dominant force in the market?
Yeah. So actually, we were the fourth entrant. There were three players before us, who were like, and then the number one was leading far ahead of us, and we were the fourth entrant. And when I joined Dialog, actually, we had only 1,000 customers, and today we are 17 million customers. So, and by 2000, we became the market leader. So the reasons, the success, and all that. So what it kind of comes to few things. Again, leadership with a clear vision, starting with doctor, and then followed by Supun, yeah, and the senior management team had a clear vision. We always, what we did was we set a vision and then a strategy to achieve that vision. And then once we reach the first one, then we go ahead and change it to to go to the next level. And then the staff is key. Like I said, we have this concept called Happy Dialogue, and we are the whole team work as whole company work as one team. So it was very clear. It's like clear goals, clear vision, clear goals, clear strategy, and the commitment from everyone from top to bottom towards achieving that strategy. Plus, especially the blessings from the parent company, investment. So as some of you may remember, we were going through a very bad patch in 2008 and 2009, due to disruption in the market, where we were making losses. Even with that situation, there were investment was never curtailed. There was faith and trust in the team, and then investment were continuously given. So which really helped us to go take that journey which we were dreaming for, and then achieve the goals. So, and then we have been number one from, if I remember correct, we became number one in 2000. So it has been 22 years, and undisputed leader, we say, because we hold more than 50% of the market share on a flow player market. So which is a great achievement for Dialog.
I know, Pradeep,
Actually, what is
you're not. So I know you're not in a position to obviously give us a in detail answer to this question I'm going to ask you. But what is the secret of staff retention at Dialog? Because I have friends at Dialog who've been at Dialog ever since they left school. I mean, they've been
that's
there
right.
for the last
Right.
20 I mean, it's been a long. What's the secret? Why are they sticking with Dialog? What do you do to them to hold on to Dialog all this time?
There can be multiple reasons, but I feel it's the empowerment, your responsibility, and the passion. There's no one to come and dictate terms at you to say, or there's no sort of red tapes, that will make your
The
job difficult.
bureaucracy.
So it's like yeah, so it's like you're empowered, you're always given the freedom, and but most importantly, we hold everyone accountable for what they do, that's key, because otherwise, so I think those things, good things, I feel go a long way, where if you're passionate about something, and if you are given the responsibility, and if you are held accountable for it, I think that will ensure the staff, that will motivate, and also there's a rewarding mechanism, when you do, and the staff, the best performers are looked after very well, and then the
Right.
required trainings, all the support, all are given. So there's a lot of good things that has happened over time, which has helped dialogue. So if you look at, even if you look at my senior team, my immediate direct reports have been with me from day one. None of them have left my direct reports. They have been with me for
Right.
almost 24, 25 years. So it's the same team.
Wow.
Same on the other areas also. Like if you look at the senior management also, there's the senior management has been there together for the last so many years. So there's a lot of unity, understanding among the staff, and also if there are issues, we don't mind trashing it out, just trash it openly, come into, you can always agree to disagree if there are disagreements, but then as long as you're transparent, you work on a very open culture, I think that will help the organization to retain the staff and move forward.
Pradeep, I know that Axiata considers, Sri Lanka the blue-eyed boy in the network. So exactly how much has, the Axiata group invested in Sri Lanka? I think a lot of people should know exactly, how much you believe in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, actually, Axiata is the biggest foreign direct investor to Sri Lanka. So they have like invested more than $2.5 billion in Sri Lanka, and the number one FDI is in Sri Lanka. So, like I said, I think many will not know about this, but the amount of investment they have done, and also what they have done. If you look at the amount of CSRs, the dialogue they do, like whether when it comes to whether it's sports or education, or even nowadays, if you look at this Manuda Mehevara, where we are like uh, like say, addressing this food scarcity, where we have already served for around 70,000 families, and looking to serve around 200,000 families together with our partners, the other corporates in the country, who have come forward to join hand with dialogue. So we do a lot. So actually, we do a lot of activities that will help the community, whether it's education, sports, or the CSR type of activities, which But if you're, purely profit conscious, looking only at money, these things may not be possible. But then Asset has been, a very good investor who look at everything very positively, and which really has helped dialogue also to, justify the case, and go and do all these type of activities that we are doing with the community and the Sri Lankans.
I think we're at the latter end of the show right now, Pradeep. I mean, we've learned so much as far as dialogue is concerned and what goes on. Like I said, what one of the main things that we actually wanted to talk to you today was how dialogue was mitigating the whole issue with drop in connectivity due to the power cuts, and still yet. Despite all the obstacles, still connecting the nation together and ensuring the nation's actually connected. And there's so much work that goes behind. And Anu rightfully said that it's really good that we actually brought that out right now, because nobody really knows. I mean, at the end of the day, the moment your phone drops, you immediately look. I've done it. I'm not going to lie to it, and I've done it. The moment the phone drops, I'm like, oh my God, dialogue. What's going on right now? I think I'm not the only one who's done it. Lots of people obviously have done it, but clearly we realize the amount of work that goes behind it. And we also know that, they're not going to purposely try to drop connection on your phone. They would like the connectivity to be there as long as possible. So all these things, it's great to actually bring that up, Anu.
And so we
Pradeep,
have been
I
here
just
for 1 hour, and I'm using dialogue. You see how smooth, and I'm on the
yeah,
dialogue
absolutely.
connected.
All of us,
Yeah,
all of us
yeah.
are
So,
actually,
so,
all of us
so
are.
what
Yeah.
more evidence you need, right? All three of us have been on dialogue connections, right?
Pradeep, I
Yeah,
would
and
just like
I
to
know
point out that I have never said a bad word about dialogue at any point. I just want to
you liar,
disassociate
you
my.
liar, you
I
liar.
have been a customer, I don't know, almost 20 years now with the same number. Never.
You
No, no,
liar, you liar.
we'll always appreciate the feedback, whether it's good or bad, because
Of course, of course.
whether it's good or bad, we always, because if it's bad, yeah, we also should learn and do the improvements required to give a better experience. So feel free to if you genuinely feel no, this is not going
Yeah,
well,
no,
feel free
absolutely. Because
to
actually,
give
we
a talk.
constructed the poll. Yeah, we actually constructed the poll to give you like a
Hmm.
general idea of what the
Yeah,
people just feel, despite all
yeah,
of the efforts. This is why I felt that better communication was necessary. Let's look at the
yeah,
poll answer right now, Shaq. Yeah.
sure.
That's right. So this was
So
the
what
poll
we
for
asked,
you.
yeah. Are telecommunications companies meeting your requirements or aspirations? Yes or no answer was required, and you were supposed to WhatsApp your answers to our hotline 077 669 1590. And here is the response. Okay, I
Ah,
can't see that.
it's
It's pixelated, so I can't. Is it
approximately
6%?
50. Yeah, I can't see it either. We're looking at almost 50-50 here, I think. Almost 50-50
Yeah, so
here.
that's not bad
But
at all.
yeah, yeah, it's 56. It's 56 is what
Yeah,
I see.
50.
Yeah,
Yeah,
56%. That's
you
not
know,
bad.
uh,
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
actually,
it's fantastic. Because obviously there are so many things that go into it, and clearly there are others who I think are expecting far too much, which unfortunately cannot be also achieved at the same time. But Pradeep, thank you so
yeah.
much. I think we learned a
But
fair amount
yeah,
today.
what it means is that
Yeah,
8.5 million customers are ecstatic about their
yeah,
connection. So fantastic.
yeah. And yeah, like I said, Pradeep, thank you so much for coming on the show. We've learned a lot. We wanted to bring out to everybody at the moment who's actually watching the show right now. We're live on Channel 1 on Dialog TV. I don't think a show like this has ever been done before. And I'll tell you what, though, your crew at Dialog TV is simply fabulous. The guys, it's like they've got
That's
this
true.
never say no and never say die attitude. They always basically come up with a solution, and this was a solution. Honestly, this was supposed to be an in-studio chat, which we
Yeah,
can't
that's
get to the studio because we don't have fuel, and we just threw it out to the guys, and obviously the solution is exactly what you see right now. So once again, thank you so much to everybody at Dialog TV. Thanks so much, Pradeep, for being on the show, and we had a great time with you, and I hope you had a great time
lovely. Thank you
having
so
a
much.
chat with us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it was pleasure having a chat with you, and thanks, Shaq, and thanks, Anu, for inviting me. And hope it was useful, and hope I managed to clarify most of the questions or the concerns that
Brilliant.
customers as well as maybe some of you have on dialogue and the services.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we should do this more often. I think we should do this more often because I mean I know it's
You
not.
can increase the
No,
forum.
yeah,
You
what
can
I'm
increase
saying
the
is it's
forum
not
to
easy.
communicate.
Yeah, it's not also easy to talk to your customers on a regular basis, but I think this is a great forum for you to obviously address all the questions and all the queries that your customers do have, and everyone's watching it online. They're watching on Dano TV, so I think it's a great forum, and I think we should have you back on the show. But Pradeep, thanks so much for being a part of the show, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. All the very best, and have yourself a wonderful night.
Sure, thank
Yeah.
you, and was happy to see two happy customers. So I hope that we will be able to ensure
And
that
one lying customer, one lying customer.
but I was
Have
saying
a
in
good
your
night,
company,
guys.
right? You good night. Okay. Bye bye.
Have a good night, everybody. We shall see you once again tomorrow night with another special guest on the show. We'll sit back with Shaq and Anu at 10 p.m. right here on Channel 1 Dialogue TV. And have a good night, Anu.
Take care. Bye bye.